What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Bills Chat Live here every Wednesday night on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, if you're a friend of mine. I am Josh McCarty here with Luka. Luka, rumor has it that even though the Bills did nothing at the trade deadline, they are still going to continue the season.
What? That's crazy. Based on the reaction we've seen online among the world and X and everything in between, you would think that the season's over and we're now need to look forward to next season and what's the draft going to be looking like and how are the Bills going to be able to get that X factor receiver in the 2026 draft or free agency? No, obviously this is all tongue in cheek conversation here. Yeah, we have a Week 10 game, I believe, against the Dolphins in Miami, where it's just keep beating the drum as we move forward now. Even with the disappointment that felt like the trade deadline inevitably became, there's still plenty of games to play, and there's obviously a target in sight.
It was disappointing, and let's start there. The Bills did nothing at the trade deadline. And, Luca and I have been beating this drum for weeks. I thought the Bills would do something. I thought they'd do something pretty big. I thought if someone like a Brian Thomas or a Chris Olave got moved, that the Bills would be at the front of the line for that. And certainly based on the reporting, it felt like the Bills were in on receiver, defensive linemen, and maybe even linebackers. But ultimately, Luca, the Bills decided to do nothing. Brandon Beane spoke to the media today. You could tell he was even disappointed. It felt like Brandon Beane and his staff probably expected to get a deal done, but the right one just didn't happen. And I know that, and it's not just isolated to Bills fans, but because I saw it on Packers Twitter, I saw it on Chiefs Twitter. When you see other teams making moves, like the Colts going for Sauce Gardner or the Cowboys for whatever reason going all in on I keep wanting to say Christian Wilkins, but it's not. It's what's his name? Williams on Quinnen Williams from the Jets. And then, the Eagles kind of doing what they do, where they went out and they filled multiple holes with Jair Alexander, I suppose. More so Michael Carter and Jalen Phillips. And then the Bills, the Chiefs sit idly by. It does kind of feel like you're watching everybody else have this party and you're not there. But for me, it wasn't FOMO. It wasn't like, oh, everybody else is having fun. You and I both thought there were legitimate needs on this team that needed to be addressed. What I take solace in, Luca, is it's not like Chris Olave got traded. It's not like Brian Thomas got traded. I think the one that most fans are like, why didn't we do that, would be the Rashid Shaheed one. But when you don't see a true number one receiver move, it's easier for me to stomach the Bills sitting this one out, although I still wish they had done something.
Yeah, I'm very much in the camp of wishing they had done something. There were still avenues to explore. And I will say, based on Beane's comments specifically, I was going to bring up other individuals, but we'll just focus on Beane here. I don't think it was like he was just sitting on his hands. He definitely made it clear that he was calling around, seeing what was available. He referenced that he was even looking interdivision, seeing what was capable with those teams, being the Dolphins and Jets. I believe he would mean both of them, since he was being plural in his statement, to see if they're available. And I would believe that, based on that and trying to connect the dots and understanding what we are seeing as fans, and then I'm imagining what Beane is seeing himself, I bet you he was calling about Waddle. He was calling about Garrett Wilson. He was calling about Jermaine Johnson. He was calling about these players that were available on teams that were clearly willing to move players, more so with the Jets, of course, as we saw major assets of theirs be moved. The Sauce Gardner trade, though, there was even the part where they had no expectation of moving. It was just, I believe Schrager said on the McAfee show, it was a Godfather style trade. It was too good to refuse, which, for all of intents and purposes, it was. 2 ones and a young receiver in a new environment on a controlled cap hit. What more could you really ask for if you're trying to truly rebuild things, if you're the New York Jets? So going back to the Bills, it's like I would have loved to see them go in on things. And what the counterpoint for a lot of things with why the Bills didn't end up making a move, or maybe the cost wasn't quite there for the Bills when it comes to, say, a Shaheed that we saw for a couple draft picks, that, the Bills are limited on their draft pick resources. And when you're trying to navigate the cap, you need to hold those of value because they are valuable to as controlled salaries in-house that can keep you low on that cap number. I get it, kind of, but at the same time, crazier things have been done in the NFL that it's not like it's the end all be all because you moved a couple day 3 picks or a day 2 and a day 3 pick or whatever it might be, that you wouldn't be able to get by. I Shaheed specifically, it was almost like you missed out on a girl and all of this. I'm doing something you do all the time, Josh. You missed out on a girl and all of a sudden
Making it
like,
awkward.
yeah, you're trying to almost explain to yourself why it's better in the long run, or, whatever it is. And people were talking about how that might have been a little bit too much for a rental and things like that. It's like, what suggests that Shaheed was a rental? I get that was a possibility, but it's like he could have also signed a longer, it maybe the marriage worked and all of a sudden it's a long-term deal. And there's so many things here that it's like, you're probably not sending a 4 and a 5 or a 3 and a 5 or whatever you would have to do to get that return. It's like, there are so many things going on. You don't need to explain to yourself why actually it's better that we didn't do it. It's like, no, Shaheed would have come into this offense and been immediately something impactful and different than anything else being provided in-house, and it would have been beneficial to everyone in-house. It's cut and dry, as simple as that. Like, I just, it's disappointing that nothing came about and you saw other teams. I will say, on Shaheed's topic, the Seahawks going to get in Shaheed and basically improving that receiver core that's been basically JSN and a bunch of other guys, like that is, it's the Bills don't even have a JSN. And they needed to add something else, and the Seahawks are recognizing they can capitalize on something here. It's just one of those silly little things that will end up being a detrimental thing and stunting the Bills in the playoffs. I would still lean to probably not. I mean, Josh Allen is Josh Allen, and he is capable of doing magical things, and we still see this offense operate at a very efficient level. We'll call it 50+% of the time. But you just have those glimpses of when it is stalling out or just not clicking on all cylinders, and it's just because of that lack of talent out there, that it's like those are the moments of why you needed to bring in that 1 or 2 things to get you over the hump. Next thing you know, we'll be talking in January. It'll be divisional round, maybe even conference championship. And it's like, we forgot about this deadline, but it just sucks to be sitting here right now being like, this is the Chiefs are sitting as the 8th seed in the AFC. The Ravens are out of the playoffs as of right now. The AFC playoff picture looks like it's 2014 if you take the Bills out of it. Like, this is an opportunity that we haven't seen as Bills fans since they've been regular, contenders in the playoffs of this recent era. So I just, there's a little bit of head scratching and frustration overall, but at the end of the day, I will say, Josh, I'm sure once we get to, the Bengals week and the Eagles week and we're approaching the playoffs, I'm not going to still be dwelling on the fact that they didn't pull the trigger on a Rashid Shaheed or somehow make the magic work with, bringing Jalen Waddle in or Garrett Wilson in or whatever was possible. It just is what it is. The market wasn't there. And then I know we talked about something offline, and I'll even let you cue into that. It's like there was a clear link to the Bills and players that if we're talking about the season here and now, but the promise is there's still potential for impact guys to come in maybe in the offseason when a price could change and be different and even lesser at that point in time. That it's not like nothing's going to happen here. It just unfortunately couldn't happen under the gun that comes to the deadline.
We got a bunch of folks in chat, a bunch of people that like to hang out with us. Ismail's is there. A lot of you watching on YouTube. If you're not already subscribed, please take a moment to like and subscribe. I see Stokes there. I want to piggyback off of his comment. I'll put it up on the screen in a second. But Luka, the folks are loving your date a girl reference. And our guy Teg is going through it in chat. In his younger days, I dated a girl just to be near her sister, the one I really wanted to date. I feel your pain, Josh. I don't know why me and Teg are now on this boat together. I don't know what I said or did to make him think that I also dated a girl to be near her sister. I love the fact that he said that. He also followed up to let us know that it didn't work. But hey, A for effort, buddy. I always appreciate you listening. I want to go to Stokes' comment here because if the Bills' season is derailed in the playoffs because their wide receivers couldn't get open, that extra second or third round pick will not keep us warm. So I don't want to sound like I'm playing the middle. I certainly wanted the Bills to make a trade. To Stokes's point, to Luka's point, to everybody's point that wanted Rashid Shaheed, the Bills do have 7 draft picks right now in the 2026 draft. So if they would have spent a 4 and a 5 to get Rashid Shaheed, just like the Seahawks did, let's just assume they could have paid that exact same price, then they would have 5 picks. I don't think that's a reason not to do it because we've seen before when Brandon Beane traded a third round pick for Rasul Douglas, thinking he was going to be getting a third round pick of compensatory picks back for losing Tremaine Edmonds, ultimately only got a 4. All Brandon Beane did was like, all right, fine, I'll trade down multiple times in the second round. I'll recoup that pick and it's fine. If you want that 4th and 5th back in April, you take your first round pick, you trade back a few spots, or you take your second round pick, you trade back a few more spots. There's ways, very easy ways to stockpile picks in the draft that you shouldn't have to worry about it at this point in time. So I totally get what Stokes is saying. The other side of things, though, and this is the part why I liked Rashid Shaheed. I love the player. I never got as excited about him as Luka. And it's really because of Joe Brady. And I didn't ever really wanna say it because I felt like it felt almost doom and gloom to say, but when's the last time we saw Joe Brady, like, really take advantage of a player like this? And maybe he's never had a player like this, but, you know, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel kind of came here reading like that, although Curtis Samuel was never a deep threat. Gabe Davis was certainly a deep threat prior to Joe Brady taking over, and he just plummeted. Stephon Diggs played the worst football of his career under Joe Brady. I think the offense the Bills run under Joe Brady is very high level. I don't think it's necessarily wide receiver friendly. I could see a scenario where Joe Brady is sitting there saying, Rashid Shaheed doesn't really fit my offense or something like that. Now that's infuriating. What is he too fast? Does he, I don't know. But I don't know that it was gonna ever be a perfect fit. The other thing I'll say is, the Bills don't have a 6th rounder next year. Yeah, but they do have 2 sevenths. So when they traded Kyer Elam to the Cowboys, they got a 7th back. And then Teg, when they traded for Brandon Codrington in preseason 2 years ago, they spent a 6th to get him, but they got a 7th back. So they do still have 7 picks, but to your point, they don't have anything in the 6th round. So that's where the confusion comes in. But I I don't like to sit here and say Brandon Beane should have gone after Brian Thomas Jr. and why didn't he pull the trigger? He's a coward. Because nobody got Brian Thomas Jr. Nobody got Chris Olave. I do believe that if the Bills were to try to get Jalen Waddle or Garrett Wilson, neither one of those guys move, they would have to pay more than your average team because they're division rivals. So it's just hard for me to sit here and be super furious about trades that didn't happen for any team. The Shaheed one is just that's the one that sticks with me because there was no other trade, Luca, that I can think of that I wish the Bills would have done. Is there any other trade that took place yesterday that when you look at the price tag, you say, I would have done that? I will say the one that a lot of folks mention, Logan Wilson going to the Cowboys, that happened early in the day. And I want you all to realize this. Based on reporting, based on Brandon Beane's press conference, they went right up to the trade deadline having conversations. There's reporting out there that the Bills were this close to getting Calvin Ridley. There's very good reporting that the Bills were this close to getting a package of Deebo Samuel and Von Miller. It just didn't work out. But the thing about the Logan Wilson trade is the reason he went to Dallas for a 7th round pick is they didn't make Cincinnati eat any money. And so Dallas took on almost all of his $3 million cap hit the rest of the year. That would have eaten up all of the Bills' cap space. They would have had no moves left. There was no way with Milano and Bernard healthy ish, with um, with Shaq Thompson coming back, with Dorian Williams finding a nice niche role as a situational blitzer, that I think the Bills at noon or 11 a.m., whenever that trade went down, with hours still to go before the trade deadline, would have been ready to say, "Yep, this is our one move. We're not going to do anything else. We're going to address linebacker." Now, had they known it was going to play out, that nothing else was going to come to fruition, maybe they would have gone after Logan Wilson. But I don't think in the morning yesterday, Luca, they would have been ready to sign for this is all we're going to do.
Yeah, and on top of the Logan Wilson idea, there's kind of a feeling that that deal could have even been like handshake agreement done on Monday between the Cowboys and the Bengals based on some of Jerry Jones's comments, where he was already kind of tipping his hand like, hey, there's deals coming, there's stuff coming. And that was clearly him kind of indicating that he was having what feels like good conversations with the Bengals and or had that handshake agreement going there, plus was having positive conversations with the Jets. I mean, a Quinnen Williams trade doesn't just, happen in 5 minutes. There's got to be back and forth in conversation with it.
I did not mean to put that one up on screen. We're gonna just move right past that one. There we go.
The one, the only, I'll put it this way. The only asset that I saw get moved that intrigued me and made me interested was, and it's someone I know you're fond of, is A.D. Mitchell being part of that Sauce Gardner trade. If the Colts were clearly at a pass with A.D. Mitchell after that Rams game, it was clear as day. His snaps went crazy down immediately following that game. There was no trust with him anymore. It had already kind of built up from the previous season in his rookie year as well, where it just was a match that wasn't working and they needed to move on. And they understood that A.D. Mitchell probably needed a new scene. And if he was truly that available as what feels to be not throw-in-ish, but just kind of like a sweetener, like what? Now they got Sauce Gardner. So at the end of the day, it's impossible to say that, the Colts approached the Jets for Sauce Gardner and all of a sudden you can come in and be like, hey, we'll throw in Keon and a fourth for A.D. Mitchell, or Keon for A.D. Mitchell straight up or whatever. And then they can do whatever the hell they want with Keon. Like if he was available that much, I would have definitely been intrigued. I think there was obviously an interest in him during the draft process by Beane and the Bills that I would like to hope that they at least called to see if he was available and what the price would be just for trading for A.D. Mitchell. Inevitably, he was part of a deal that got the Colts what they feel like is an all-in approach at a season on Daniel Jones's shoulders, which is a fascinating thing in its own right. But that was the one piece that got moved. I will also say Trevor Penning, we were not going to trade for an offensive tackle, but Trevor Penning getting moved just for a simple 6th round pick, like Trevor Penning it's Spencer Brown. Like it's the same thing. It's a very large athletic tackle that wasn't really working out in New Orleans for all of intents and purposes. He was a 1st round talent though. Like he has these capabilities to him that it's like, man, if you could just throw away a 7th or a 6th for a Trevor Penning, like get him in house here. You can just kind of learn, set. I mean, it's just imagine him being your swing tackle or whatever. Like there's just things like that where it's like, we're not addressing immediate needs anymore. I'm just talking about players that got moved and trees. I will also say Joe Tryon that got moved for a 7th round pick. That is, or 6th round pick. Sorry. That was included with the 7th round pick going with Tryon. He's a fun one. I don't think he fits the Bills though. But he was definitely a name that when I saw him get moved, I was also intrigued by it a little bit. That it's like, oh, okay, we're just throwing away 1st rounders here for 6th round picks. Like, okay, all right, that's intriguing to me. I mean, the fit was obviously not there in the Browns, but what else does fit with the Browns other than money into Myles Garrett's pockets? So there wasn't too much going on, I will say, during the deadline. Just a couple guys that, and I'm not even mentioning Jacoby Myers because I just don't think it would have made sense. So outside of Rashid Shaheed, We'll include the asset that is AD Mitchell and maybe just taking a flyer of a 7th round pick for Trevor Penning if it was available potentially, although the Chargers got him, which that kind of sucks because, puts the Chargers in a place where it's better because Joe Alt shut down for the season. Yeah, there wasn't too much going on really overall.
I think for AD Mitchell, I feel like when you look at both the big trades the Jets made, they didn't just get multiple premium picks back. They got players back that they probably had high grades on during the draft process that maybe they just think need change of scenery. And that was probably why AD Mitchell moved. Because AD Mitchell was one of two receivers I had my eye on at the deadline that I thought you could have probably gotten for a pick swap, along with Jalen Hyatt, who was a reasonably high draft pick graded player that just has not worked out, fallen out of favor big time with their current teams. And then so Mitchell ends up going to the Jets. The other trade that the Jets made was with the Cowboys, where they sent Quinnen Williams for a 1, a 2, and then Mozzie Smith, who was picked one pick after Dalton Kincaid. So I love what the Jets did as an aside. I totally applaud the Jets because you can have all the Sauce Gardners, all the Quinnen Williams you want. We lived this life for 17 years. You can surround Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Trent Edwards with all the Mario Williams, Nate Clements, Terrence McGee's, Lawyer Malloy's, all Tequila Spikes, all you want. It doesn't matter. Like, get the quarterback right. And it wasn't until Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott came in here and traded off Sammy Watkins and traded off Cordy Glenn and Tyrod Taylor and Ronald Darby and just stockpiled assets and traded for a future first round pick, picking out that draft class that a year out looked loaded with Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, ultimately Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Josh Rosen, and really saying that's the draft class we're going to go in with more assets than anybody. That's when you can fix your franchise. It's not about keeping these draft picks and drafting another good tackle at this point for Jets fans. They've run through all the options at quarterback you could possibly want. The busts with Zach Wilson, the guy who was bad for them but good for somebody else with Sam Darnold, the guy who was bad for them but decent in Geno Smith, the retreads, Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tyrod Taylor. Hello. And then, most recently, obviously, the guy who was once great but now is no longer great, Aaron Rodgers. So I applaud the Jets. Um, yeah, I think that's about all I really have on the trade deadline. I don't think that this makes me feel worse about the Bills as far as their season outlook. It is interesting that we're sitting here, Luka, 3 days after the Bills defeated the Kansas City Chiefs, who by most accounts was the number 1 team in the power rankings right before that game kicked off. And outside of giving up a boneheaded 4th and 19, they didn't just beat the Chiefs, they shut the Chiefs down. And I feel like the most prominent mood among Bills fans that we interact with is negativity and disappointment because of the trade deadline that came and went. But I think it's important to also remember this. Who are the Bills trying to fill in the gaps for? Ed Oliver, who's not going to be back until playoffs at best. I think it's best for everybody psychologically to just assume he's gone. If he gives you anything the rest of the way, it's a bonus. Michael Hoyt, not back till next season. And then right now, they're looking for any kind of a boost at the wide receiver position. Let's just take those one by one. Ed Oliver's a defensive tackle. Less than 7 months ago, the Bills traded up in the second round for a pass rushing defensive tackle in TJ Sanders. They also have Daquan Jones coming back off of injury. Both those players are coming back, along with Larry Ogunjobi, who now has played 2 games for the Bills. They have reinforcements here. Unless the Bills were going to swing massive for someone like a Quinnen Williams, which just made no financial sense and no draft asset sense based on what the Bills have spent on defensive line, I don't know that trading for Harrison Phillips, which is what a popular move among Bills fans, was going to amount to anything more than what Ogunjobi or Daquan Jones or what TJ Sanders could be. I would rather TJ Sanders get reps the rest of the season than Harrison Phillips get reps. That's where I'm at with that, because ultimately you never know when he can become the next Cole Bishop, where the light comes on. It's like, hey, we got a player. Defensive end, Michael Hoyt. That's a tougher one. But you do have a 3rd round pick in Landon Jackson that has not really been active this year. And I will say Solomon in that Michael Hoyt role, which is really the defensive tackle, I call it the shit disturber role that they had Hoyt playing on Sunday. looked pretty good. So you have answers there. You have a third round pick in Landon Jackson. Receiver's the tricky one. You basically have Joshua Palmer coming back from injury, which is not nothing. And you have Gabe Davis on your practice squad, which might be nothing. And then, you have Curtis Samuel, who I guess is getting healthier every week. And, I think honestly, Elijah Moore, who's probably been underutilized. That's where the tricky part comes in. But the Bills do have answers. And to their credit, Luca, a month ago, you and I were both like, get a quarterback here now. We have to get Tre'Davious White off the field. And they held serve even when Dorian Strong went down. And all of a sudden, Max Harrison goes in there and they look smart. So they have a chance with some of their other picks to look smart. It's not like they don't have anybody coming. But I do think that Bills fans have a right to be a little bit skeptical that they're going to hit that parlay of all their in-house answers working out.
They look smart like a winner at a roulette table. And what I mean by that is you're gambling with what you're trying to look smart with. And luckily you're hitting thanks to a rookie, which we preach. You should not be looking for immediate dependable results right out the gate. Especially if you're a championship contending team or one that wants to win a championship. But yes, Mad Max in already his small, brief debut for this Bills team has looked revolutionary almost in a way at the corner position that is starting to allow at least that defense to trickle down where it needs to. I love that my head just always goes to players trickling down to where they need to be, because it to me, it emphasizes like the fact that somehow we're trying to uplift players into roles that they don't belong in. And that's why we keep seeing these frustrating moments and just situations where players are they look awful or out of place. And that's because, well, they are out of place. They aren't playing where they're supposed to be, where their intended role is and everything like that. So the defensive side of the ball, I will give credit to Beane, McDermott, the front office, everything. I will give credit that they didn't take a swing on a defensive end, or, not for a lack of trying. That it feels reasonable to understand that they would probably call about certain individuals, but they didn't take a swing on anyone. They didn't take a swing on a corner. They didn't take a swing on a linebacker. They stood pat because they at least recognize there are answers coming back for them in-house that aren't and haven't been available to them a lot recently. So that is fine. The receiver point to me is just like, you can try to snake oil sales me all you want on Jordan Palmer,
Josh
Palmer. God, I do it every time.
It is what it is.
Josh Palmer, Gabe Davis, if you really want to go down that road, like all of these things. And I'm going to bring up a conversation I had at the bar before the Sabres game last night with a buddy, where we were having this discussion and he brought up Josh Palmer. It'll be nice and impactful. And he's like, he looks good in that Atlanta game. I'm like, he looks good on the first catch of the game. And then one catch before he got, like, you are referencing two catches. Talk to any Chargers fan ever and tell me the career arc of Josh Palmer. It is, just a guy who's been around, makes a few splash plays that you're like, oh, this is what Josh Palmer is, and gets hurt immediately after that. Restart cycle, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That is Josh Palmer. And Josh Palmer needs to be something in this offense. And I'm excited for certain parts of his game to come back because it's better than other things available right now. That said, you look at all the other pieces, and I mean, Gabe Davis to me is completely irrelevant until shown otherwise. He's coming off a major injury. He is who he is. Like, I refuse to believe that he's anything of impact until he shows me that he still is Gabe Davis that we saw 4 years ago now. The one that I even brought up, though, was Khalil Shakir. Khalil Shakir is obviously a noteworthy offensive weapon. He's not a number one receiver. Anyone that thinks that is obviously crazy delusional. But then my point to him on top of it was, if you're a defensive coordinator, if you're a game planner for this Bills offense, number one target is obviously Josh Allen. Number two target is James Cook. And then outside of there, Khalil Shakir doesn't even move the needle enough for me to be like, oh, we need a game plan for Khalil Shakir. And I think that's it's in part due to how the Bills and Joe Brady utilizes Khalil Shakir now. The Khalil Shakir we have in our brains of being an impact player was of his rookie season, 10, 15 yard ins, curls, whatever, and being slippery enough to turn that into big plays. Now all of a sudden they're doing that average, that catch and average depth of target 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage, 1 yard in front of the line of scrimmage on simple drags. Like, the reason he had these huge chunk plays is because he was still catching the ball down the field. That doesn't happen with Khalil Shakir anymore. Like, he has, and he brought up his touchdown against Carolina. I'm like, yeah, he slipped through a couple tacklers at 1 yard in front of the line of scrimmage, maybe 1 yard behind the line of scrimmage, and took it to the house. Like, that is not what you call an impact player by definition of the fact of you're not looking at that and going, we have to game plan around that. You don't. That's a good player making a great play. That's what that is. And that's all it is. And he's the only one that can even probably say he checks that box for this offense. So my point to all of this is you have absolutely no one that any defensive coordinator worth their weight in gold looks at on tape and goes, that guy is someone we need to at least focus on in coverage. That is someone we need to focus on. The number one guy in that is actually probably Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid, your tight end, is probably that guy. And even then, you just can do things since he is a tight end where you're bracket coveraging him with, say, your best nickel and a linebacker inside to help chip. You can do things safety over top with a nickel and or linebacker, depending on the formation out there. You can do things to neutralize and take away a tight end that's a little bit simpler than taking away a slippery, dynamic wide receiver. And that answer does not exist in this offense. So now the trickle down effect of all that is no one out wide is going to get open. No one out wide is going to make that impact play for you unless Josh Allen himself creates that opportunity for you. And that is unfair to 17. That is unfair to request that he does that 25 to 30 times a game. Like, you should thank your lucky stars if Josh Allen creates, let's call 7 opportunities like that for you, where he's extending the play, creating the openings and the time for you to finally move your slow legs and do whatever you need to do to get open downfield. That's disrespectful to your franchise MVP quarterback, and they refuse to do anything otherwise. I'm not trying to soapbox this thing here, but that's the frustration point with doing nothing about that and sitting on your hands and being unwilling to pay any price for a dynamic receiver. As we sit this, and this is years of this. This goes before this season. It's at some point the rubber will meet the road and it will become a massive problem and you need to address it. Again, thankfully 17 is so damn good that it's still going to get us far, most likely, but it's frustrating in the sense of you can sell me all you want on the defense and how those answers are in house, and I'm with you. But I cannot for the life of me see any answer that is worth its weight in gold, a post-it note on a post-it note on a monitor that is like, I need to pay attention to that because that can make an impact and that can change things, because it just doesn't exist in-house.
One word answer. Can the Bills win the Super Bowl with these wide receivers?
Yes, asterisk.
Okay, so
Josh Allen.
here's the thing. The Bills, in my opinion, can win the Super Bowl with these wide receivers. They can't win the Super Bowl because of these wide receivers.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part here that people forget. And I'm getting ready to compliment the Bills, and it probably doesn't sound like it, but when you look at football teams in general, I mean, you look at a team like the Bengals, their wide receivers are fantastic. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. It's easy to be jealous of them, but you look at that team, that team is not built to win a Super Bowl. That team is built to be in track meets every week and then ultimately lose because their defense can't stop a nosebleed. The Bills, I'm guilty of this too. The Bills are an elite offense. Whatever measure you want, points per game, yards per game, EPA, whatever chart you want to look at, the Bills are in the top 5 of every metric you want offensively, except for passing yards to wide receivers. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of us who spent 17 years of a drought just waiting for a quarterback to have a 300-yard game. And then Josh Allen takes off in 2020, and it's like bombs to Diggs and John Brown and Beasley's open, and it's 400-yard games in Miami and 400-yard games here and there, and Josh Allen breaking statistical records that we never thought were going to get broken. And now we're watching this team run a much different style of offense. And what I think is interesting, this is not the kind of offense I would build if I had a quarterback like Josh Allen, but nobody is asking me to build their offense. I think there was a shift philosophically with this team dating back to the Cincinnati Bengals playoff game when they had the Bengals in their building in bad weather, everything you would want for a Buffalo Bills playoff advantage, and they got pushed around on both sides of the ball. And they made a decision that day that it was gonna be going forward, they were not gonna lose a playoff game because they couldn't run the ball. So, where I'm going with this is you see a new trend in the NFL. You see now, and I'm fascinated by the Seahawks, by the way, and I'll get to that in a second. You see a new trend now of teams going more under center, going more heavy personnel, multiple tight ends, single wide receivers, and passing out of running looks. That is the Bills' bread and butter. And holy cow, are they a tough matchup when they have 2 or 3 tight ends on the field, 1 wide receiver, and James Cook, because they have 3 tight ends now that can all catch the ball. Dalton Kincaid is a mismatch for any linebacker or safety that wants to cover him. Whatever receiver is out there is whatever. And then you have James Cook, who is a lightning rod when it comes to lightning rod's not the right term. He's a lightning bolt. And they absolutely crush teams out of that formation. It's impossible to stop their run. Jackson Hawes has been a better blocker than Alec Anderson and can actually catch the ball too. There are all 22 clips every week of the Bills blowing holes wide open on defenses, good defenses. What does that mean for Seattle? Seattle's been doing the same thing. They are not a spread you out with 3, 4 wide receivers. I know Torrey Horton has had some good games. He's a bit player in their offense. Cooper Kupp is a bit player in their offense. Where the Seahawks really get you is they go in base personnel. They have 2 tight ends and Arroyo and Barner, and they have some backs who aren't nearly as good as James Cook and Walker and Charbonnet, and they're passing out of run looks, and that's where Jackson Smith and Jigba is just destroying defenses. And I wonder, it'll be interesting to see, does inserting Rashid Shaheed into the mix actually somehow make them worse offensively because now they're changing up their style? I would kind of doubt it, especially because he's going to an offensive coordinator that's very familiar with him. But I think it's at least noteworthy that the Bills are a great offense. It may not be the kind of offense that we all would want to see. It's not the kind of offense that if you pick up the sticks on Madden, you want to play. And that is dumbing it down because it makes it sound like, oh, you're a dummy who just wants to throw it. No, there's real numbers behind, like, if you throw the ball, you're going to be more successful than teams that run the ball. But I do think that at its core, this is a great offense. It's just not the kind of offense that we all envisioned when Josh Allen went on this Hall of Fame track that he's on right now. So it's the offense we got for the rest of the year. I think the offense is good enough to win the Super Bowl. And part of that is a very mediocre group of wide receivers that are part of a great offense. And that's important for all of us to remember as we get frustrated. And then the other part that I'll just say quickly, none of these conversations would be happening if Keon Coleman was good.
Yeah.
If Keon Coleman was good,
Mm-hmm.
that this wouldn't even be a remote conversation. All right. Speaking of things that aren't good, the Miami Dolphins are up next. They did not go on the fire sale that many of us expected, Luka. Tyreek Hill's out because of injury. Jalen Phillips did get traded for a 3rd-round pick, but outside of that, they didn't move a bunch of guys that Minkah Fitzpatrick, Bradley Chubb. There was talks about Achane and Waddle. Those guys are still there. They are coming off of a long rest because they played last Thursday. What kind of challenge do you think these Dolphins are going to be for the Bills this week?
Challenge is a stretch of a word, I would put it. I believe that the Dolphins are in a certain situation where you have it's not even a dumpster fire. It is worse than that. The fire's already been extinguished and they're already going to bring it to the dump and or scrap it for parts. And you're just in transit right now. Like the dumpster already was on the corner and in the alley, burnt out. It's soot filled. it's now been picked up in transport to being junked and scrapped. I I think the Dolphins are just an absolute train wreck disaster in the sense of you have promising guys on offense like Achan and Waddle that you refer to, but you have the least confident, most useless quarterback as of right now in Tua that is incapable of doing anything correctly. And yet he feels like he needs to be a press darling and say all the right things at the podium, which is, it's like the ultimate combination of what not to do. Because if you're garbage, you almost look better if you look frustrated and angry. Like, by you looking calm and being like, hey, we're having these player only meetings. Hey, we're doing this. I need to be better and I need to show up and do these. It's like you just look like a pushover. You look like you're lost and you're just, you want to be the nice guy. It's like, don't be the nice guy because you look like garbage right now. So there's that. And then the defensive side of the ball. I mean, Minka being moved would have probably, I guess he's been having an okay year, but it's been up and down in my eyes for the Dolphins. Rasul Douglas is questionable right now. The defense is just an absolute shell. It's there's no impact guys whatsoever over there. We talked about these receivers being incapable of doing things. This is a week I would like to see the receivers' confidence go up a little bit because there is opportunity to be had there. Rasul Douglas being out would truly put them in a situation where, Arizona State alum Jack Jones is the only reasonable corner to play for them at the moment in time. And Jack Jones has been up and down. I know he also, and mainly on the downside, I know he picked up an injury, I believe, in that Thursday night game, although he did finish the game out. And I'm not sure if he was listed on the injury report or not. I don't believe he was, but it's just the week 10 matchup of the Dolphins is one where I need the Bills, hopefully as a fan, to treat it like a business trip and not get a case of the Miami flu, and not, be too too nonchalant with this matchup, because their C to B minus effort should easily get this over the line. But I'd like them to treat it as if, we need to keep building on the momentum. If the Bills can go into Miami and truly dominate, let's say for the first 3 quarters, do it similarly to like how they handled the Carolina Panthers game, I will have an extreme confidence that this team does understand the goal at hand and understands where they are both in the standings when it comes to their own division, along with the conference, and what the opportunity is in front of them when it comes to all of those things, and the ceiling that is in play. The 1 seed is still, something they can achieve for right now, that you can't be looking past a team like the Dolphins because it would be so easy to do so with where they currently sit as a roster and kind of confidence and all the things right now. This might be the least fun Dolphins game we've had in the Allen era, Josh. This is like, I didn't forget that we're playing the Dolphins, but it is the ultimate, like, I can't even convince myself that I put in our thumbnail, letdown question mark. I can't think of a way that the Bills would even let themselves down beyond going to Miami, partying their ass off, getting the Miami flu, and just deciding like, hey, a D effort would still be good enough. And look, this is still the NFL. You can't exactly show up with your D effort and expect a win. You could maybe put a game together, but that's the best you could probably do. But overall, this team it stinks to high heaven. It is an absolute disaster class. That is the Miami Dolphins I am talking about.
They did fire their general manager, Chris Greer. It does sound like they're going to keep Mike McDaniel on board through the rest of the year. And some of the reporting even makes it sound like they might continue with him. I think he's a fantastic play caller. I don't know that he is the right personality to lead an entire group of players. And that's where I do think it's possible that he's a better coordinator than he is a head coach. We have a question in chat about how the Dolphins defense ranks against the run. Good news. Their defense is bad both against the run and the pass. They are ranked 30th against the run. They've already allowed 1,300 yards on the ground. Some of that is game script because they're losing by so much. But I will say this, and the Bills injury report came out today, and I do think this is probably the biggest story for the Bills this week. Christian Benford was limited with a groin injury, but because Sean McDermott didn't mention him in his press conference before practice as somebody that was going to miss practice, that tells me that groin injury happened in practice. So, not all groin injuries are the same. Let's just talk about groins for a second, I guess. But not all groin injuries are the same. But last week, it was Taron Johnson who had a groin injury pop up, and he missed the game. And is he practicing in full? Let me go get that right now. Taron Johnson's still not practicing. So I think it's very realistic that Christian Benford doesn't play in this game. Okay, so there's your best cornerback down. I think that Joey Bosa did not practice today, and he is a do not practice with a wrist. You saw him kind of shaking it against last week against the Chiefs. Luka, I'm a believer that if Joey Bosa wakes up with a sniffle against the Miami Dolphins, you rest him. This is our bubble wrap plan we've had all along with Joey Bosa, where it's like, get him to the playoffs. Now, look, if this was the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Colts, we don't play them this year, a team that you're really battling for a position in the playoffs, yeah, if you can play, play. But this is the Dolphins. Go beat them without Joey Bosa and let Joey Bosa take a week off. And that gets us to the biggest injury that we didn't see come through. James Cook missed practice today with an ankle injury. And Thigh Doctor, who uh, does content for Buffalo Fanatics, who's, he's right up there with Banged Up Bills as far as, Bills content creators that really do have a good eye for injury, predicts that James Cook's going to miss this game. So you want to talk about a situation where it's like we haven't seen anything out of the Bills' backup running backs. Well, hey, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and maybe Frank Gore Jr., it's time to show us what you got. And I'll say the same thing about James Cook that I said about Joey Bosa. I don't hate the idea of him getting an extra week off. I really don't. He's had a lot of carries this year, and he is the second most important player on offense that's not Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown, that I need him healthy in January. So in a game where the Bills are favored by 9.5 points against a team that's going to run for the bus, I should be able to beat them handing the ball to Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. And to Luka's point, going against those cornerbacks, I should be able to rely on Khalil Shakir, Coleman, maybe Joshua Palmer, Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel. Get open, go win some matchups. But Luka, my mindset here is anybody that's iffy, sit them this week and go win the game. This isn't my way of saying like overlook the Dolphins, but I'm sorry. The facts are the facts. You are a much better team than this. You shouldn't force anybody on the field, and specifically James Cook and Joey Bosa. Let's talk about Cook. What's your confidence level in the Bills' running game against this opponent based on what we've seen so far if James Cook doesn't go?
My confidence would be a 7.5 out of 10 against this opponent. And I say that because I respect our offensive line at full throttle to the utmost. They're in their bag. What we saw against the Chiefs out of this offensive line, and then even extending that to the Jackson Hawes, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid types, they were very, very efficient in the run blocking. Like, it was impressive. I believe, not to keep pulling from McAfee show, but it is my daily watch during work. AQ Shipley does a weekly segment where he ranks his top 5 offensive lines of the week. The Bills were rated number 2 due to their effort against the Chiefs. There's a reason for that, and that's obviously coming from a Super Bowl. Well, I'm not going to do the McAfee thing. Super Bowl winning is a stretch for AQ Shipley, but he technically was on Tampa when they won, although he got hurt early in the season. Regardless, I digress. He at least has been around. He knows what he's looking at when it comes to offensive lines. We all know that this offensive line, for that matter, is very, very good. They should easily be able to dominate the line of scrimmage against this opponent. And ultimately, even with a lackluster Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, you would like to expect that they should be able to be capable of 4 yards per carry. 4 yards per carry is the goal, I would call it. If you can get to that 4 number, that's called a first down if you ran it 3 straight times. It's simple mathematics, right? Like, just get it to that number, and I would imagine they could do that. I'm all for just roundabout, going right into the injury stuff here quick. Joey Bosa's banged up. James Cook's banged up. Like, even if Josh Palmer's, let's say he would be at 80% for this game. Let's chill it out. Like, this Miami game is the one where you can let's have this be a Tyrell Shavers game. Let's have this be a, whatever you want running back game. Let's have this be that game where it's, again, business trip. You go there, you take care of business, get the win, get the F out. That is fully capable even without those guys. You should be able to go to Miami and get the job done. Because even, you mentioned the certain opponents like Chiefs, Ravens, Colts in this instance, who we don't play. But if they were playing them, you might want to maybe get them in there at 80, 85, 90%. I would say even the following week, the Bills are hosting the Buccaneers team, who has been very good this year. And that's, if you're still targeting the 1 seed, it is an NFC opponent, but you can't let games slide. And that's one where you have that game, and then you go to the Texans on a Thursday night, where you really got to balance that situation there. So, hey, Joey Bosa, rest this week because it feels like we need you to rush Baker Mayfield the following week. And, or maybe you feel like you need to capitalize on that Texans one, so you're going to be resting this week and the Bucs, so you're good on that turn at the Texans, which is a very quick turnaround. But, whatever it is, this is a tight window. You're playing 3 games in 11 days. 3 games in 11 days. Like, you need to be able to manage things and figure it out from there. And you need your depth to step up where you ask them to. This is the NFL, and the Miami game is the one where you probably need to lean on that depth a little bit more. Like, you need these guys to step up and make some plays for you, or else realistically, you didn't build this roster good enough in the first place. The depth wasn't there. This is that type of game, this one where it's like, just make it happen. It's just, you got to get it over the line, and you still have this offensive line. You still have Josh Allen, and you still have majority of your defense there, and you rotate through everything, that it should get you over the line, even against a divisional opponent, because Miami is just a box of scraps at this moment in time.
Tag asks, don't you worry about giving starters a game off could backfire on you. It's a division game. Yes, it's Miami, but any given Sunday. I hear what you're saying for sure. And we're not saying like, hey, sit Josh Allen. We're saying anybody that's legitimately on the injury report that could come down to a game time decision, or, someone like a James Cook, where you're talking about an ankle situation where it could linger. Why not just give him rest and let him heal up? This is a Miami Dolphins team that has lost a ton of starters due to injuries. They traded away Phillips. They lost Tyreek Hill. This is a team that if you start Josh Allen in the starting offensive line, and Kincaid and Knox, and you have Keon Coleman, you have Khalil Shakir, you have the majority of your offense out there besides James Cook, you should be just fine moving the ball. Everybody gets healthy against these Miami Dolphins defenders, and then on the other side of the ball, it's Tua throwing to Waddle and A-Chain, and you shut that down, and they don't have much else. And this is a team that's, it is what it is. Like, I want to err on the side of caution here. The regular season is a marathon, not a sprint. All right, Luka, we got a few minutes left. Let's get some predictions in for this game. The Dolphins are favored by 9, or well, could you imagine? The Bills are favored by 9.5 points in Miami. Early reports are that this stadium is going to be very, very royal blue when it comes to the fans in the stands. It's November. It's a trip to Florida. Dolphins fans at this point would rather do anything else but watch this team. Who could blame them? I'll go first with my prediction. I think the Bills win. I think the Bills win comfortably. And I think that the Bills use this game as an opportunity to get some guys going that need to get going. If James Cook doesn't play, I would expect Ray Davis to get the majority of the carries. And this is a good chance for Ray Davis to prove that he is up to the task of being the backup to James Cook, the guy that you can bring in, throughout a game for maybe 5 or 10 carries and not feel like you're just donating it down. Get him some confidence built back up. Keon Coleman. I mean, holy cow, dude. This is the secondary to get yourself going against. It doesn't get easier. I made a joke on Twitter about all those back shoulder fades we heard about in training camp. Well, oh yeah, it's because he was going against the Bills secondary. Like, this is legitimately the worst secondary Keon Coleman will see the rest of the way. Great opportunity to get his confidence going, to get him going. And then defensively, I'm excited about the fact that Maxwell Harrison, if Benford can't play, probably has to play a full workload. And what does that look like? That's Miami. That's Florida. That's heat. So how does he come out of that? One other thing I wanted to mention before I kick it to you for a prediction. AJ Epinesa is on the injury report for a concussion, which must have popped up in practice today. So now you're down Hoyt. You could be down Bosa. You could be down Epinesa. The Bills did sign Kingsley Jonathan, their practice squad today. You're looking at a situation where it could be Greg Rousseau, Landon Jackson, Javon Solomon, and Kingsley Jonathan at defensive end this
Mm.
weekend against the Dolphins. But my prediction is that the Bills still win this game pretty comfortably. Maybe it's a little ugly at times. Miami flu is what it is, but I'm going to say the Bills win this one by a score of 34-16. Luka?
Ooh, it's funny that you say 34-16. My head was almost there. This is one of those ones where you painted it perfectly. I'm not going to do a long-winded response here, but this is where you need to build up confidence and ego stroke a little bit. This is where the guys that are available that have been having down years or have been hearing it from the media, from fan bases, whatever they listen to, or hopefully they're shutting most of that out. But this is where those guys should hopefully build up on top of, as you painted it perfectly, rookies have opportunities to step up and get both game time as well as maybe a feel for what's going on in live reps. So, and I say that because, as you mentioned, if Max is getting a full workload, that's awesome. If Landon Jackson is out there finally getting, rather than a handful of snaps, he's going to actually get some meaningful rotational snaps. That's great. Like, get these guys up to speed, because there's a chance that when the games start mattering even more, you need them to come back in and make impact plays for you. So it's an opportunity, at least, for you to capitalize on that. I just, even with all of these potential question marks that are there, I think there's just enough confidence around. Russo hopefully should still be playing, of course. He's not on the injury report. Cole Bishop is sky high right now when it comes to his confidence, I imagine. Max Harrison is, even with what he's been doing in the limited time, he should be a confident young man right now. And then on the offensive side of the ball, Josh Allen is still Josh Allen, and this offensive line is still this offensive line. It is when you have those 6 individuals for you lining up, you should be capable of scoring on anyone, even with accountants and salesmen surrounding them. And when you're playing a lesser team like the Dolphins, you just got to get and take care of business. I put this score at 33-19. It's a weird one, but it just feels like one of those kinds of situations where it's going to be that weird result overall. It could be put away in 3 quarters, and then you just see some weird things happening late in garbage time, as it, fantasy owners might know it as. I just, overall, this is probably going to be a little bit of a snoozer. It's perfectly tucked away in the 1:00 slate that I need to see the Bills handle this like a business trip that it is. Go in, take care of it, get out. You got the win, and you have a tough Tampa team coming to your house in the following week. Like, that's the reality of this game. Do not let an emotional letdown come after a big win against the Chiefs while you still have all the opportunity in the world to get the end goal and capitalize on the season of how it's developing right now in this moment in time where, depending on how results go, depending on how things are, the Bills could be in a prime spot here still as they continue down this path for that 1 seed. And after this week, the Chiefs are still not in a playoff spot. After this week, the Ravens are still not in a playoff spot. That is the reality here as we would be ending week 10, assuming they win this game. That isn't a crazy. If you told any Bills fan that you're in week 10 of an NFL season and the Bills are still having a chance at the 1 seed and the Chiefs and Ravens are technically out of the playoff picture, you would ask what kind of dosage that individual is on. That is factual. I don't believe anything else. So there's opportunity here that is crazy, that these Bills need to focus on handling this stuff with lesser opponents like it's a business trip and still give it their all, get the hell out of give it their all, give it the effort that's needed to get out of there with a win and hopefully in a comfortable fashion, while also taking advantage of, as I even mentioned, a Tyrell Shavers game, maybe getting him more, getting him the ball more to get confidence. It's an opportunity that you should be able to capitalize on to build confidence where it doesn't exist right now in this roster. So hopefully that this team as a whole is more confident once the games get going for real.
You mentioned Tampa Bay, who the Bills play next week. We're all big Buccaneers fans this week. They host the New England Patriots also at 1 o'clock. So if you are somebody that has multiple TVs in your setup or can watch a Bills game on your TV and use your smartphone to watch another one, I highly recommend watching that one because I think that there's a good chance the Bucks win that game and the Bills beat the Dolphins. And by about 4:30 p.m. Eastern time, the Bills are sitting at first place in the AFC East. It would be a beautiful thing. All right, Luca. Either way, I will be here on Sunday afternoon for Bills Dolphins halftime. Hopefully, it is not a stressful situation. I could use a stress-free halftime show, although we do get better numbers when it's chaos. And then you and I will be back Sunday night, Monday morning when it drops for Bills Dolphins post game. Plus, we'll just kind of reset the standings in the AFC. Hopefully, all goes well. Hopefully, no more injuries for the Bills. Holy cow. And then Luca and I'll be back next week to preview the big showdown between the Bills and the Buccaneers. Josh Allen against Baker Mayfield. This will only
Hell
be the
yeah.
third time these guys have gone head to head since they were drafted in 2018. Both have a win over the other. Our friend Ismail's saying, "Go Bills." We absolutely echo that. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Enter for your that gets you entered for your chance to win a Keon Coleman signed helmet, which, it's still a Bills signed helmet. It's a Bills player, folks. Come on. But for Luca, I am Josh McCarty, and we will see you next time on Bills Chat.